right.
I'm called Chef Steph at
Chef
the
Steph.
Distillery.
I love it.
So if you walk in, you go, is Chef Steph here today? I'll usually go, no.
Chef Steph, welcome to the Tiger Den.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes. We met several months ago, and I knew almost immediately that you were just an interesting person. And so,
Thank you.
Yes, you and your husband, Jim, live out on a farm, and you cook.
I do. I'm a chef at Mississippi River Distilling Company in LeClaire, Iowa.
She's one of those people, guys, that kept giving food to me throughout the thing, and fed me coffee. And you just seem like a very interesting person.
Oh, thank you.
So that's what this is all about. We're going to do some taste testing on the podcast.
Yeah,
So,
I brought goodies.
yes. So you want to start with that?
Well, how about this? How about if we start with, here's how I got here.
Please, dive in.
Okay, so I had little children, and my husband had a business, and I needed to stay home for a little bit with little kids. And so I got a job. There were no fine dining restaurants in the town or the county where we lived. And so I got a job for the University of Illinois.
Small town, middle America.
Yeah. Middle Illinois.
Yeah.
And so I got a job working before online. I would develop recipes for the University of Illinois for the home extension service. So that's been, over 40 years ago.
What's home extension?
Like they have meetings for the farm wives and now some city wives. They talk about like gardening tips and canning and recipes and things like that. It used to be that they had a monthly meeting. I don't know if they are all online now, but for example, they wanted tomato recipes in, let's say, April because they wanted to publish them when it was tomato time. So I would have to always be working ahead. And I could do that from home. And this was back when you literally had to type it out, put it in an envelope, and mail it. And then they would mail you back critique, and this, change that, change this. And then I would do that, put it in an envelope, mail it back, which is why it took so long to get stuff done.
When you say type it out, you mean write it out? Or like you have computers?
No, typed it out.
Computers.
Yeah.
Or typewriter.
On a typewriter. Which I still own, by the way. Yeah, it's an antique. So am I. Anyway, so that's how I got started because I was an art history major in college. And when I graduated, I came home, and my father was a founderman, and he didn't really grasp what I was going to do with art history. And he goes, "How do you make money with that, Steph?" And I went, "I don't know." And because there was you'd have to be like a curator at a museum or something. And so I said, but I'd worked in my aunt's kitchen. She had a restaurant. And since I was 8 years old, I used to go and work in the kitchen. And well before that was illegal, I could run a fryer, and I'm like 9, which your eye level is right with the grease. So you could have been blinded with an order of fries or onion rings. So it was the hard way to grow up realizing that the restaurant business was where I really wanted to be.
Wow.
So that's how it all started. I went back, I got training. Then when the children were all like on the bus and in school, I decided, okay, I still live in a small town. There's no white tablecloth. There's no fine dining. I'm going to drive into the Quad Cities. And so I drove in 40 miles into the Quad Cities to a food service distributor and went into, I made an appointment with the sales manager and said, I know what I can do, and I don't know what you would need of this, but here's what I could do for you.
How old were you at the time?
Okay, so the kids were in school. I would have been mid-30s by this time. I'm back to work. I go in and I say, I'm a chef, but I also grew up in a family that was very business oriented and very bottom line, are we profitable? And I think what I could do is I could travel around with your sales force and teach people how to use items in your distributorship, in your freezer, out of your refrigerator.
Did you just think of that idea and say this?
It kind of came to me. Yeah. I think it was a God thing. I think God knew that I needed a job.
Wow.
And I needed a job that I could do without standing in a hot restaurant every weekend, because I had children. I wanted to be home for the weekends and the evenings if I could. So he said, well, we don't have a job like that. Go away. And so ever the pushy broad that I am, I said, I've got an idea. Why don't I work for you for a month at no charge, and we'll see how this works. So I got a list of his top salespeople, and I went with the top 2 salespeople, which happened to be in Peoria at the time. And I rode around with them, and they would take me into the restaurant, and I would have a freezer bag and a cooler bag, and I would make a plate presentation of the food that we had at the distributorship and show them how they could do it in their restaurant.
It's so smart.
And we put the plate together, and then I would put the plate out and say, what do you think you could charge for this? And they would say $15. And I would say, okay, the food cost on this is actually only $4.50. So you've got a real profitable item here. And then the salesman would write the order. And so they went to bat for me and said, we do need this. This is a job that we need. So that was way back in my career.
That's fascinating.
And then, like I was doing that, I was going into Chicago pretty much after the kids were in college. They were in college and living in the Chicago area. I was in Chicago from Monday until Thursday. Then I would come home on the weekends. And so I would invite them out to restaurants that I needed to call on so that I could go in the night before unannounced. They didn't know who I was. And I could see what they were doing right and what they were doing wrong, and then bring the right product in to show them that we can upscale this, or we can make this easier on you, or make it better. So a lot of times we would go to some of the fine dining in Chicago, and they would bring college friends, and I was kind of the best mom ever for a while. Anyway, so that's how we got started. And then the distributorship sold to a national company. It wasn't locally family owned anymore. And they didn't have that job, and they didn't want that job. So now I'm in my 50s and I have no job. And so still unwilling to go stand in a 120-degree kitchen all weekend. I still wanted my weekends and my evenings. So I'm like, okay, I need to do something more, in line with my lifestyle and my husband's lifestyle. And so I started teaching culinary, and I taught at Scott Community College, helped people get certified in sanitation and learn the basics. And then I started taking students on trips in and out of Chicago to ethnic neighborhoods, ethnic restaurants, because you need to learn that Davenport, Iowa, you can be a big fish in Davenport and not even be a minnow in Chicago.
Right.
You need to understand your place in the world. And so I would put them on the bus, and we'd leave the campus early in the morning, and then we would go tour kitchens and meet chefs that I had known and that I had sold to from the food service distributorship. So anyway, that got going. And then the college sent me to TV stations to cook on TV. And that's where I met the owner of the distillery where I work now. Ryan Burchett was a weatherman, and he would come over while I was cooking on TV, he would come over and eat the food. And so he really enjoyed the food. His wife's not much of a cook. And so he would eat all the food, and I would go, we got to save this for the next segment, So we had a lot of fun. We got to be good friends. And then one day he came over, and he's kind of whispering that he and his brother are thinking of opening a distillery, and would I like to come to work for them? And I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Sign me up. And he goes, no, wait, we haven't talked about money. And I go, okay, I get to cook, drink, and I get paid. That's crazy. Thank you. Yes, I'll do it. So he goes, I guess you're in. So that was 14 years ago. And I've been doing this for 14 years, cook on TV, travel around, teach some classes, cooking with spirits.
Yes. So your experience on TV helps you get more business at the distillery, I'm sure. Because you're saying Chef Steph at this distillery. Yes.
And I bring cocktails, and I cook with the alcohol. And that makes people go to our website, which is mrdistilling.com. And I have 470 recipes on there, cooking with our alcohol. And that helps it's really a marketing job because if you buy a bottle of bourbon and you drink it like one shot a weekend, that's going to take you a while to get through that bottle. But if you're using a half a cup in a recipe, it's going to go faster.
Makes sense.
So it makes the flow of business go. And people learn that I might not be a bourbon drinker, but I'm a bourbon cooker. I mean, they really learn how to handle the product and learn what it can and cannot do. So it's been good for the distillery. Yeah. I think it's been really good for me because I get to use my imagination. There are people who can walk through a fabric store and see a bolt of fabric and think that would make a beautiful dress. I don't have that. I've got none of that. I can't use a pair of scissors effectively. So I can walk through ingredients at a farmer's market or a grocery store, and I can see and almost taste what I'm going to do with it. And it's just a gift from God.
So you're a visionary.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I think it's a gift from God.
Yeah.
Because if I look at like pumpkin and bourbon and you think, how was that going to go together? There is a sample of pumpkin bourbon soup right in front of you.
Which I'm going to try.
Okay. So it is, give it a little stir.
Okay.
So that is...
so potatoes in it or?
No, it's thickened only with pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Yeah. So it's got shallots and garlic and pumpkin spice.
It's very flavorful.
And there's bourbon in there. And there's maple syrup to make it sweeter. You want to balance it so that it's not sweet like pie, but you want to make it sweet enough that you recognize that the bourbon has got a sweetness to it. The maple syrup has a little bit of sweetness to it.
That's so good stuff.
And pumpkin is really a versatile, healthy, inexpensive ingredient. It also is something unexpected. So I served this at a party that we had at the distillery. A family bought a barrel for their family to all have their label on it, and
bourbon.
It was a bourbon that they had waited.
I was thinking pumpkin, not a barrel. Pumpkin.
Actually, they wanted a party to celebrate their bourbon being done aging, and so they wanted everything.
How long does it take for a bourbon to age?
Well, you can age it as long as you like.
I see.
But they wanted theirs aged about, I think it was 3.5, 4 years, and so our bourbon doesn't have any of that burn to it.
Right.
Going down, we actually only use and keep 60% of what we make. The 40% is the burny part, and we sell that to an ethanol plant.
How do you separate the 60 from the 40?
There's a chemical, a little thing, like a piece of equipment,
like a sensor.
Yeah, and you're gonna take the burny part out. So what you get is a smoky kind of barrel aged flavor in whatever food you cook. And it adds a richness and a depth of flavor that you don't have to have that burn experience to know there's bourbon in it. You've got the other side of bourbon, the sweetness. Bourbon is basically a corn whiskey.
Right.
We buy all of our grain from within 30 miles of the distillery. So our formula would be local grain and local water, and the only thing that comes from further away are the barrels, and they're made up in Wisconsin. But on the Mississippi in Wisconsin, they could have actually float them down to us if they wanted to. But they're pretty as local as we could get handmade bourbon barrels, and they have to be unused oak barrels that have been charred on the inside.
I see.
That makes it age and turn brown.
There's in business. There's a famous book called Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS is what it's referred to as. And there's people in businesses. One of them is called a visionary. One of them is called an integrator. One of them is called a processor. So those are the three main ones. Visionaries can see things that don't exist yet.
Okay.
So it's people who think of ideas that say, this is where we need to go.
Yeah.
Integrators are people who make that stuff happen. And processors are the ones that think about the numbers, the figures, the data.
To make it work.
Yes. So they all three work in tandem, which thankfully I have those two in my business, but I'm also a visionary. I love to think of ideas, creative ideas, see a problem, creative solution.
Right.
It sounds like that's exactly who you are as well.
I didn't know that that's what I was,
Yes.
but that would explain. I had a boss once tell me, actually the guy that I went in and said, you don't have this job, but I want this job. He said to me at one point, you stop it. You think out of a box that hasn't been invented yet.
That's right. Yeah.
That explains it. I thought he was just over, hyperbole. He was just going.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Visionaries they can taste it before it even exists.
Yes.
You can see the idea in real time.
I look at it as a blessing.
Same. Yeah.
And now I'm sure that there are people that think of my skill is a curse because of the fact that it takes time for people who don't get it to come around.
To understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm married to one of those. He needs time to get it in his head.
He's
we're gonna go this
Yeah.
way. We're going to take this little building and we're going to make it go that way.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's like, I don't know. We'll think about that.
When I first met you guys, I sat down, I remember, and Jim kind of opened up and how he sat back in his chair and he started asking me questions, kind of like understanding who I am and what I do.
Yes.
And I felt like I was on trial a little bit. He's like asking me these questions, but it got me a sense of who Jim is to really understand before, because most customers don't like that.
No, he had a very successful career asking the right questions.
Yes.
If you needed something from Jim, you needed him to connect with your idea and to understand that you will be good for paying him back. And that's an insight that he has he reads character very well.
Yes.
Very.
I worked with a banker pretty close to here at a small bank, and most big banks just run the data on the backside.
numbers.
It's just the credit score and just it's mostly financial information, and they make credit decisions based on that. This guy sat me down and he interviewed me for like 20 minutes. And he goes, I know who will pay me back and I know who won't. Just
Yes,
by interviewing
that's
people.
exactly it.
But that's a very different take on banking, because banking systems and who are the people who write the things in the back? Underwriters.
Yes.
Underwriters want factual data.
Right.
But this guy was also the president, and I felt very comfortable because I was like, I'm going to pay this guy back, and I did in full before the term was. But he was just reading me the whole time.
Right.
Like, tell me more about this.
Yes.
Which I appreciate.
And there's certain people, especially in the banking business, that they don't have that gift. They are the numbers people, and they sometimes rise to the top, and that's not necessarily a good thing. We have the same problem in the restaurant world, where you have people who graduate from culinary school and can't do the math
Yes.
to figure out if a
Margins.
restaurant is going to be profitable or not. So, for example, someone wanted to open a small cafe, and Jim said, not until you talk to my wife. And so he made us meet up and look at what she was going to serve, what she was going to charge, what it cost her to buy the product, and how many people she needed to get this menu accomplished. And the numbers didn't work. So you have to look at a different menu. And you can't, although most restaurateurs these days really want to be visionary and have a whole new menu every week or day, and who want to, I blame Food Network because I think they watch too much Food Network where you don't see the background of what it takes. For example, I had to quit teaching at the college because the kids had watched too much Food Network and they didn't want to do the business math.
I see.
And so they're doomed to failure unless there's somebody at that restaurant who does it for them.
Right.
They look at Food Network and people just throw food in a skillet and put it over high fire and get it done in 15 minutes. And that is not real.
Right. Especially at scale.
Oh, yeah. And they throw like a handful of mushrooms and truffles into a pan with a pound of butter, and they don't have any idea that that's extremely expensive.
Yeah, truffle's expensive, right?
And they put that over pasta, and they haven't done the math. So, it was critical for me that I wanted them to switch the way they taught the craft, that you had to learn to do the math first. Because any monkey can dice a carrot. And really, they can. I've seen it happen. So you need to be smart enough to figure out what you're doing and then learn to do it. And if you're not smart enough to pass that first business math class, then you should probably look at not owning your own restaurant.
Yeah, sure.
And
also the marketing behind it and how to push your product to the public. Like, is there actually a need for your product? Right?
Or the market. At one point, I occasionally, because after the distributorship sold and they didn't have a consultant person like myself, restaurateurs that I had worked with kept calling me and still do. I'm still in touch with several.
Wow.
And they need the help. They need that person standing back and telling them, this is what you're not seeing. And so one of the stories that proves this true is a person who had a very successful 24-hour pancakes, hamburgers, chili on an interstate where truckers would pull over in the middle of the night and eat all kinds of things. And on Saturdays, there was a line outside the door down the block for those pancakes. And Friday and Saturday night, there were drunks there at 2 and 3 in the morning eating hamburgers and chili and fries. And she had that really great business and decided, well, this building is available closer to my house, which she lives in a very nice neighborhood. And so she bought a failed restaurant, which that's a whole nother thing. There's buildings that have the whammy on them, we call it, where failed and failed and failed. And there's a reason that it sticks with the building for some reason. But anyway, she bought this building and she moved her business up there. And then I said, okay, this is the problem. Nobody in this neighborhood stays up all night. They're all doctors, lawyers, teachers. They go to sleep at night and get up in the morning, and then they're in a hurry to get to work. If you had a drive-through window, they might get breakfast to go. But these people have offices and they have jobs and they need to be going. They're not just stopping after a drunk. That's not who you have here anymore. So being open at 2 and 3 in the morning, I'm looking at the cash register receipts. Nobody was there, which had 3 employees. So that's a definite loser. So I know the truth and I have seen what's happening, but you have to make them understand what's happening. And even though it was their dream and their vision, you have to do the math for them.
Yes. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time about, I want to open this business, I want to do that business. And I'll walk through some of the same conversations about what's the possible acceptable market, who is searching for these things on the internet, do they want this product? And then what are you going to differentiate yourself from the competition to take market share? And then, from differentiation to product. Roofing, it's an interesting business because most roofing companies sell similar products or the same products. There's only a few manufacturers in the country. So you have a few large manufacturers and then you have a bunch of people who essentially distribute the product. But the differentiator is communication, professionalism. Your truck wraps are very important, right? The location of the business, how you are going to grab market share, what's your sales strategy, what's your marketing strategy. The actual product is relatively the same across the country. A California roofer is selling the same product to people in Illinois. So we have to understand that. And if people don't have a go-to-market strategy that's strong in that first 3 to 6 months, strong push,
you're going to be a loser.
You got it. And so I would assume the same for restaurants. I saw a show with somebody talking about if somebody goes to a restaurant and has a good experience, there's like a high likelihood they'll come back.
Yes.
But if somebody has a medium or less than average experience, they'll never come back.
Right.
So the stakes are very high.
And I think that the thing that really is shocking to me is the number of people that open a business and don't plan on being there.
Yes.
I, at one point, went in unannounced and they didn't know who I was to check on this restaurant. The salesman actually had told me that they were having trouble paying their bills for the food, that the family was fussing and fighting with each other in the restaurant. That's always a bad sign. That's
Is it mostly family restaurants that you see?
Okay, so chains have the advantage of that the math is all done for them.
Sure. And the brand is there.
The brand is there. People either go to Red Robin or go to whatever, Cracker Barrel. They go to it because they love it. And the thing about America this is just a truism about us. If consistency didn't work, there would be no McDonald's, there would be no Holiday Inn. Even when I was traveling for the distributor, I knew there were certain brands of restaurants that I could dependably go through and get a cup of coffee.
Yes.
there were certain hotels that I could stay in and have clean sheets and safety and security.
Every time.
And there were others that are like, maybe yeah, maybe no, depending on who owns it.
Right.
And so consistency is what people are after. And what young chefs and young visionary chefs are after is inconsistency and uniqueness. And then you have to come up with, if you make something on your weekly menu that everybody ordered,
keep it,
and you ran out of it, you better learn to love to make it.
Yeah.
Because if you give it up, you're going to make people angry. And they're going to come in and ask for that. And when you go, oh, we don't make that anymore. Oh, that was seasonal. We don't do that. If you make something that's a huge seller and you're not a fan of making it, you got to get yourself happy making it.
I think that's also a pride thing. Because
Yes.
it's like you're not listening to your customers.
Right.
Because they might not like to make that dish at all, right? But it's like my customers love
it.
Therefore, I will mold my business to what the market demands.
Absolutely.
So many times when I publish marketing stuff, the stuff that I didn't think would get traction gets traction. And the stuff that I overproduced or overhyped or did a bunch of stuff for gets no traction. And so I have to constantly listen to what my customers are saying.
And the customers always, I went to, there's a chain of restaurants out of the Chicago area, Let Us Entertain You. They have the, how people around here would know, Mangiano's, Corner Bakery, those kind of places. But they're basically, well, they're all over the country, but mainly big cities, huge cities. Like in Chicago, you can't walk a block without a Corner Bakery. I mean, they're everywhere. Rich Melman was the owner, and I had the opportunity to call on him several times for the distributorship. And back when he was just like a handful of restaurants instead of a mega chain, he was in the office every day, or he was in one of the restaurants every day. And he had a statue outside in the lobby of his office building that said, "The customer is usually right." And I thought, okay, that's true. Sometimes they're way off, and they don't know that you can't do that. You can't make that hamburger for $2 anymore.
Good point.
They can know that they love it, but they don't know that you're now paying $6 for the same ingredients that you were 4 years ago.
Yes. Are restaurants behind on that stuff when price changes? Like in our business, we get price increases usually twice a year, once a year for sure before we enter the season. But it's a very, like, an email goes out from the distributors, and it's very forward. So we just raise our prices from there based on that. But restaurants, it's probably more like a frog boiling in water.
Every week.
Because you really don't, there's no push to say we're pushing all these prices up. It's probably one or two things every once in a while.
Now, if you want to go, okay, so here's a very simple and kind of interesting to me fact about McDonald's. When they have the McRib, that means they want you to order pork instead of beef because the beef market is high.
Fascinating.
So you notice that the McRib comes and goes.
Yes.
I always look at the sign and go, the McRib is back. And I'm like, it's a real mediocre piece of meat. It's made of chipped up little pieces of beef that fell off of some other process. And then they pack it into the shape of ribs.
I see.
And douse it in really good barbecue sauce, put it on a bun. But they're doing that at specific times when they need you to stop buying hamburger and go over here to my more profitable item.
Yes. Put this over here.
And you
That's
have
fascinating. So it's based on
the cost of the
cost
food.
of material.
And they are in charge of that. And there are probably hundreds of people watching the market.
Yes.
Back when I worked for the distributorship, the Cheddar's chain was one of our biggest customers for hamburger.
It's your local in Peoria.
Right. Yeah. And I used to call on this one all the time. The salesman here was the top salesman of the whole company.
Wow.
And so anyway, we became aware of the fact that the beef market was really important to their business.
I see.
And I had a couple of other businesses that the butter market and the cheese market was so important to their menu that I started tracking the market for them.
Fascinating.
Now there are chains, there are people at the chains that watch the markets and direct the menu so that more and more egg items are coming off menus because of the price of eggs.
Makes sense.
And more people are doing a QR menu so that they don't have to go. You remember how you used to go to a like a diner, and they would have like little pieces of tape with different prices on it.
Sure.
So you don't want that. That looks cheesy. So
and then reprinting the paper.
Oh yeah. You don't want to have to do that. So a lot of people are going to QR codes so that you can slide that extra nickel in there.
I see.
And not have it be like on a piece of.
What's your thought on QR code menus versus paper
well, it
menus?
happened during COVID.
Yeah.
Got people back into the restaurant.
Because I know people are upset about it sometimes.
There are people like, I'm married to one, doesn't have a smartphone, can't read a QR code. He refuses. So when somebody hands him, like you go to the table and there's a QR code there, he'll go like, I don't know what that's for.
Can you just walk me through the menu?
Yeah.
Via verbal?
I end up reading him the menu, which is real annoying, I have to say. But I will.
Jim, I hope you watch this.
He watches me on TV, so maybe. Anyway, the point being that QR codes they're here to stay. Business cards now are like QR
Obsolete.
codes.
Yeah.
I still like a business card because then I can like have it in a file and look it up. If I ever lost or broke my cell phone and lost all my contacts, I'd be okay because I also have them in paper.
Paper form.
No, that's because I'm old. But I know all you kids are going like, you don't need to be doing it.
we just made a pivot back to old school. We're going to print 1,000 magazines for our business, and every customer we meet with, it's a 12-page magazine, and it shows who our team is comprised of, the founding of the business, our products that we offer, our process and how we do business. It shows everything in a 12-page foldable thing that's magazine size. But a lot of our customers, our target's 35 to 60, even older than 60, but that's a huge demo. And people like to have something they can hold on to.
Right.
It's still something we like,
yes,
as long as it's something instructive or helpful.
And colorful.
And well done.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people with the there for a while, menus were coming out weekly on little half sheets of paper. And the chef and the business manager would run them off, and they would have one color, like the background was white and the type was black or burgundy or whatever. And then they would have a number hidden somewhere, like 8, after a bowl of soup, 8. And it took forever for people to catch on that that's the price. But what they were trying to do is not put the decimal point and the other numbers so that people didn't think of it as like money.
I see.
But people still think of it as money. That's part of our culture.
Of course.
But they tried that for the longest time, that they would just put like 11 instead of 10.99.
I see.
And I think the QR code thing was getting away from that. They put all the numbers in, and if you have your smartphone, you can see it, but they can change it.
Yes.
So what they were doing is they were hedging their bet. To make a profit, it needed to be $7.10. They would go ahead and put an 8 after it. Then they would hedge their bets that there's room there for the food costs to go up or down.
I see.
You see, so it would be saving them printing and everything, but the QR code is saving them all of that.
Right.
And if you have a smartphone, which I would say 100% minus 1 have a smartphone, that you can, easily read it. They can easily change it. It's interesting to me that people who, when you walk into a restaurant and they have that menu up on the wall, a lot of those now are going digital.
Yes.
So that they can change it.
Yes.
And
the pictures.
Yes.
They can input the pictures. Yeah.
Right. And like even simple chains like taco places and stuff, they're going digital because that lettuce went up a nickel in a week. And so they need to account for that. Cheese, meat, and produce markets fluctuate so often and so big fluctuations.
Yes, based on seasons and
or
availability.
The weather in California or, and there's time.
Shipping costs.
Oh, yeah. Which shipping costs and gasoline prices. I don't think, we don't want to get political for sure, but the price of petroleum has to do with the carryout box. The carryout box is made of petroleum product.
Fascinating.
So back in the day when I was working on the street in Chicago, carryout box was, maybe 3, 4, 5 cents. Now they're like 62 cents.
Wow.
So the problem being a lot of these small family restaurants overfill the plate and then they have to give them a carryout box.
I see.
And then they don't come back the next day because they've got another whole meal at home in the fridge.
Makes sense.
So you have to advise them.
Portions are really important
Yes,
as well, yeah.
you have to advise them. You need to weigh and measure everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be scooping food onto the plate and think they're gonna really enjoy this plate full of food. They're gonna have too much food for a human to eat, and then you have to give them a 60-cent box.
Interesting. Yeah, whenever I go to restaurants that I've never eaten at before, the first question I always ask the waitress or the person I'm ordering food from is, what's the most popular or what's the best thing on the menu?
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of know if this is the one answer you probably already know that I hate. It's everything's good.
Yeah.
And everything's not always good.
No.
There's certain things that companies do way good, and so certain companies do really poorly. So if they don't answer that question well, I'll say, okay, what's the most popular menu on the item? And they'll tell me those things. But if a good waiter or waitress can explain why something's good and say, if you're here for the first time, you should certainly try this, 99% of the time I'm saying that's the thing.
Yeah. And I always ask them, what do you order?
That's right. What do you order when you're on your lunch break?
Right.
Yeah.
And if they spend their money on it, then it must be good.
Mm-hmm.
Or they've seen it made and know that it's well done.
Yes.
And now we're in Lent, and you'll notice that there's seafood everywhere on every menu. Even Arby's, we've got the beef. We've also got the fish now. And I'm always surprised at the price of seafood during Lent. It's like they know there are people that have committed that they have to eat seafood. And it's not just on Friday. Maybe they're going to eat it every night for 40 nights.
I see.
And so the price of seafood now on menus has changed. If you went into a fast food restaurant and ordered a fish sandwich 2 months ago, different price. And they crank it up because they know now they've got a captive audience.
I see. Yes, supply and demand.
Yes.
Yeah. Is the price of the actual fish right now more expensive because people are buying it so much, or is it?
A good purchasing agent will purchase what's in season and what's available at a good price.
I see.
So like if you've got the manager of the restaurant looking at what's in season, if it's pollock, then that's we're eating the pollock. It's got to be the problem with a mom and pop restaurant is mom and pop are usually working too hard to watch what's going on in the market. That's what a lot of people that hired me would hire me to watch and call them. For example, steak restaurant, like, do you remember Ned Kelly's?
Of course.
Loved them, worked for them extensively. They had me watch all kinds of markets for them because it would be, they wouldn't buy just sweet potatoes. They used to have sweet potatoes instead of a baked, or you could have either or, baked or sweet potato. And so it would be a truckload of sweet potatoes. So you would say like, okay, we need to buy them now because they have bad weather in North Carolina, and we need to buy a truckload now. They will store, and that'll help us ride this.
But where do you even keep a truckload of sweet potatoes?
When I worked for the for the distributorship, they had a contract with Ned Kelly's, and they would store their food for them.
I see.
Then there's an interesting turn of events. They started having leftover sweet potatoes, like a lot of them. And so they said, Stephanie, what can we do with all these leftover sweet potatoes? So I got a whole bunch of their leftover sweet potatoes. I think I came to this one or the one in Bloomington, and just mashed them up, put them in the mixer and mashed them up and made puree, not unlike canned pumpkin. And then I made a cheesecake. And instead of using pumpkin cheesecake, I used sweet potato cheesecake. We started having to buy extra sweet potatoes, and because the cheesecake was very, very popular. And so that's what you have to, in a chain, for example, that was a small regional chain when you had like 7 restaurants. They can have someone like me keep track of that sort of thing.
I see.
And as mom and pop, they don't have that advantage.
Yeah. It's the same with roofing companies, actually. And you either have to, there's only a certain level of business you can attain. So you either have to be doing it by yourself and working 80 hours a week during busy season. You have to either grow to a certain point to hire people to start taking those positions on, or you have to get super big. There's like no in between of those stages. So as you're growing, you got to be mindful of your costs, because roofing systems are $15,000 a piece, right? For one roof, or $10,000 to $15,000. So to get to $1 million in revenue for a roofing company is not that difficult. It's not that difficult. For most restaurants, it's very difficult.
Oh,
right?
Terribly difficult.
Yes.
The margins are extremely small especially when you're not watching the market.
That's right. Roofing can be similar in the sense that it's easy to get to $1 million, but then the winter comes. Nobody's roofing for 3-4 months. So you've got to stock up money. And then guess what happens in April of the following year?
Everybody wants a roof.
Taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So you're now paying taxes on your revenue from the previous year. So if you don't have credit lines, which by the way, you can't get a credit line on a roofing company for 3 years.
Oh dear.
So again, it's a sprint and I was like near poverty for the first couple of years, because I was like, I really have to just stretch the dollar to try to get myself propped up. So in the future, I can potentially hire people and then start to roll it a little bit larger. So,
well, when people call me and they have a vision for a restaurant and they want me to consult with them on whether this can work and whether this is profitable or not, I just helped a young man who had never worked in a restaurant before. And I begged him not to go into the restaurant business. And then I made parameters for him and said, you don't have any money. You can't go into the restaurant business unless you have 3 months of the capital that you need.
Yes. Which is bigger than you think.
Oh, and so we did the menu, and then I priced it all out on current cheese and all the meat and everything that he needed.
Did you have like 5 items?
Oh, he had a menu that was way too extensive. So I cut it way back, since I said, how many pizzas have you turned out by yourself on a weekend? I cook for my friends all the time. I'm like, how many pizzas have you turned out? Oh, I've done 7 or 8. Okay. So I did the math for him and the rent where he wanted to be. And I go, you can't even open the door.
Right.
You can't turn the lights on with the profit from 7 or 8 pizzas.
Yeah. It's not the revenue from the pizza.
No.
Yeah. It's the takeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the restaurant industry right now is bad because of the food cost.
I see.
And the fact that petroleum, the cost of taking the food out of the refrigerator and bringing it on a truck to your restaurant has gone up, just the gas. The styrofoam is made of petroleum. It's gone up. The petroleum to run your refrigerator and your freezer gone up. So you don't understand going into it. I love this. I make really good food. This hamburger that I make is the best hamburger, and all my friends come over every weekend and want me to make them hamburgers.
Yeah.
I love that for you. You have a lot of good friends. I hope they bring their own hamburger. And then we did the math, and the math just did not work.
Yeah.
You can't take a business plan that is running negative,
right,
and giving yourself a salary. That's not even. Don't even plan on you getting any money.
No, you're not. That's called sweat equity.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I think about this stuff all the time, because I didn't know what it took to run a roofing company either before I started. I had concepts of an idea. And
who helped you?
Well, YouTube.
Okay.
I YouTubed a ton of information. I watched a lot of people, creators. One of them is called Dmitry Lipinski out of Minnesota, and he ran a roofing channel. He still does for like 10 years. And he just talked about his experience as a roofing contractor, what you have to do. And one of the first things he said was wrap your trucks. You have to wrap your trucks. Most people think, I'm going to save that money and I'm going to be really lean on things. So I took that to the extreme. And the first thing we did before selling one roof was wrap 2 trucks with tiger stripes. And what happened, Steph, is our Google impressions and the searches for roof tiger or tiger roofing shot through the roof.
Yeah.
So the marketing angle, on the search perspective from Google, what happens once Google sees that people are searching your direct name?
Yes.
Let's say somebody searches Chef Steph many, many times over. Google then thinks Google's in the business of providing solutions to people's questions. So the more time somebody Googles your direct name, the more they'll push you to the front of the line. So that's where brand matters.
And restaurants. I've noticed that restaurants that get Googled a lot, especially if something bad happens.
You got it.
If it makes the news that something bad happened at your restaurant, that is where you get a lot of people searching you. Now, it's not good news
Yeah.
because people, I actually went to I go to the National Restaurant Show in Chicago. I had a very good friend and customer, he'd been a customer of mine for decades. He opened a really nice restaurant in a town where there is a ped mall. So you have to walk into the restaurant. There's parking ramps and stuff, but you have to basically no cars on that street where his restaurant is. There's tables and there's people walking around shopping and things like that. And he's got outdoor dining. So on a Mother's Day, which is the busiest day, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, you don't want to go to a restaurant unless you have to. And he had reservations and no extra room for anybody to come. And a guy came in pushing a stroller, a wife, a young man, a wife, and a baby in a stroller. And they came in, and it was explained to them by the young woman that was greeting at the door. I'm sorry, we're full. We have no open tables. And, well, can we eat at the bar? Well, yes, but you have a baby with you. So what are we going to do about that? Well, she can sit on our lap. And I'm like, okay. So they went ahead and let her in. They let them in. And that was mistake one, because now you've got this person who has an aggressive attitude with the hostess. And hostessing should be a training, because you don't seat people that are a problem before they get seated.
Interesting.
But a lot of people hand that job to an 18-year-old who's cute. And I say, you may as well have given her your wallet because she's in charge now.
Liability.
But anyway, you should not have put a family of 3 at the bar, but they did. And he already seemed like he'd been served somewhere else.
Oh, no.
So he ordered the tall Bloody Mary or mimosa, whatever the special was that day. And he drank that. And then the wife is drinking as well. And they get the second big drink, and there's still no waiter or waitress that has a minute to come over and get their order. And the kitchen is backed up because it is Mother's Day. And so he starts complaining, and on a volume that was just really
obnoxious,
distracting to other families that were paying to have their Mother's Day. So then the bartender tries to calm the situation down. And, you go through every restaurant situation. You have a bucket of gas and a bucket of water, and you have to decide which bucket to use. And he decided to use the bucket of water and try and calm him down. Well, that just irritated him. And so he got a little bit louder and a little bit louder, and the bartender said, "You're going to have to leave." And then he stood up and started yelling, "You're throwing me, my wife, a mother of this baby, you're throwing us out on Mother's Day." And he just started screaming and yelling. So my friend, the chef, comes out from the back, and he's only got buckets of gas. He doesn't know about throwing water on a situation to make it calm. Like, here's a gift certificate. Go away and come back later. But anyway, he takes a hold of the man, which is, we never do that. And he starts yelling, "Did you see that? I've been assaulted." Oh. And it just escalated out of control. And it's Mother's Day. Now, I've been taken out on Mother's Day before, and you don't want that in front of the children, So anyway, they're swearing and using all kinds of bad language, and there's all this. And then finally it's heave-ho out the door, and mother and baby screaming and crying, and it was ugly. People who weren't in the restaurant and didn't even see it went on Yelp and reported it. And so this was like, Mother's Day is like the weekend before the National Restaurant Show. So we're all exhausted. We're all walking miles and miles and miles to see the latest and greatest in the restaurant industry. And I am cranked up because his numbers went in the toilet after all the bad reviews that he got on Yelp. And his restaurant had 40 seats, and there were probably 2 turns. So it's maybe a total of 120 adults there that day. Sure. And there were probably 500 people who had an opinion about it.
Oh, no.
And the guy who was thrown out, of course, all of his friends are talking about the chef and how horrible he was treated and everything. Well, they heard one side of the story. They didn't see the scene at the bar or walking all the way through the restaurant.
Of course.
So I go up to the Yelp. Yelp has a booth at the National Restaurant Show. They want to sell sponsorships. So I go in and I say, can I talk to who's the manager here today? And he says, well, it's this guy over here. So I wait for him. He's talking to somebody important. And I'm like, I'm wearing a chef's coat. I'm not important. So I walk up to him and I said, I've got an idea that will help Yelp, and it'll help the restaurateurs that you're trying to sell sponsorships to. You make every single complaint or wonderful review wait 24 hours, and you send it back to them and see if they still want to say that.
Interesting.
And he said, oh, no, we rely on immediate information. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And sometimes it's wrong. And sometimes it ruins the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you need to be aware of what you're doing, letting drunks and people who just have an opinion and weren't even there comment what that does to a small family-owned restaurant.
Totally. Reviews are so powerful nowadays that the internet has become the marketplace, right?
It is.
We Google things, we search things, we ingest information, and that's how we make decisions.
And you're anonymous.
You are anonymous.
It's rather, if you would have walked into the restaurant and said to the chef, I really disagree with the way you handled that. Mm-hmm. He would have probably listened to you and bought you a drink.
Yeah.
Very reasonable person.
There's been times where, Steph, I've had to refund people, give their money back after we've done a job before, just because of the unreasonable nature.
Yes.
There are things that go wrong during construction. This is not a plate of food.
No.
It's you're taking something completely off their house and putting it back together. Things do go wrong. It's a high risk business. But I love reasonable people that can work through issues. And oftentimes they become your biggest fans because you're willing to rectify issues. But when people are unreasonable and they don't want to help alleviate or make the situation peaceful, it can get, you just got to be a professional tongue biter.
Yes.
Oftentimes.
You do. And the way things are handled on the internet is so emotional these days.
It is. Hyperbolic.
So much hyperbole on the internet. Mm-hmm. And politics used to be fun and interesting. And now I have unfriended so many people because I don't think social media is where that belongs. Yeah. Belong to the League of Women Voters. Go to your national Republican, whatever. Do your politics on I share pictures of my delightful grandchildren.
Yeah.
My dogs.
Yeah.
Farm sunsets, sunrises, and I'm like my garden. And I feel like my friends and my family, that's what they want to know. What's Stephanie up to today? Well, I take pictures of food a lot. Okay, so this is a little plate of brownies.
Let's
or a little
dive
container.
In.
Okay, so we make liqueurs. Okay. And our products are available at Binny's and Friar Tuck's.
What's the name of the company again for the camera?
It is Mississippi River Distilling Company, but the bourbon and a lot of the products are called Cody Road Bourbon. We have a Iowish cream. Get the play on words there. It's not Irish. It's from Iowa. Iowish cream liqueur.
Are you Irish yourself?
No.
Oh, Iowish.
Iowish.
I thought she said Irish. Okay,
like the state, Iowa-ish. And we make these flavored liqueurs. Everything we buy is within 30 miles of the distillery if it's available within 30 miles of the distillery. Okay. So we make a strawberry vodka, for example. So you distill your vodka, you throw actual strawberries in there, and you let them steep and extract the flavor out of the strawberry. And then you've got this wonderful strawberry vodka. Well, we were noticing that people were wanting something creamy. And so this was, I think it was probably 14 years ago. We decided, okay, Irish cream would be fun play on Bailey's Irish cream, but we want it to be better. So we use cinnamon sticks, vanilla beans, coffee beans from an Iowa roaster who roasts our coffee beans for us. And you throw that into vodka, and that extracts all those flavors, and then you add the cream and an invert sugar. And a lot of times people find our Irish cream better than Bailey's, and I use it in cooking a lot of times. But what the people want is food made with the alcohol that they love, made with a added flavor that they love. So like you had the bourbon pumpkin soup.
Yes.
People love pumpkin. People love bourbon. I put the two together. This is the same brownie recipe that I have been making for 15 years, and I'm sick of it, but it's what the people want.
Now, selfishly, I already had one out in the lobby, but I'm going to have another one for camera. Is it possible? To
put
the cream on there?
Yes.
And do I put one of these on there as well? Would you recommend a certain pairing?
This is a bourbon pecan.
Okay.
So what I've done here is I soak the pecans in bourbon.
Okay.
And then I took sugar and put sugar on the wet pecans and put them in the oven and roasted them. And then they get dry and crispy.
I love pecans.
They're the best, aren't they?
I'm not going to chew into the microphone, but fantastic.
So they're crispy and they're sugary, and then they have that bourbon soaked into the nut.
Yes. I love to buy the pecans at the mall during Christmas. You know what I'm saying? The pecan roasters.
Caramelized pecans. Okay, so we make a salted caramel liqueur.
And this is like
that's more salt.
Just regular salt.
That is salt that so you can make bourbon smoked.
Should I put this on this?
Probably not.
No, okay.
Salted caramel already has salt in it. So the salted caramel is a liqueur.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Very good.
So
I love sauces.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay, so
sauces and creams and.
So that's a dipping. We use like a cookie or something, or I put it between layers of cake, and it's very fluffy. It's basically emulsified liqueur and butter.
It's delicious.
So our liqueur is really good, but if you add butter, how can you go wrong, right?
So the weatherman who approached you 14 years ago, are you guys still in business together?
Oh yeah, he's the owner.
Tremendous.
He's great. He's still my boss.
You don't hear that. Not that you don't hear that. It's just rare. Number one, it's rare that companies last for longer than a decade even. But it's also rare that the original people who started the business are still in business together.
Yes.
Because so many things can go wrong.
Yes.
Feelings can get hurt. Money can go dry.
Yeah. The first meeting that we had, there were 4 of us. Ryan and his brother, and one guy named Sean, who we were sitting at a folding table in the construction site where the distillery was being built. And I thought, how am I going to get people in here trying the alcohol, even people that don't drink? And then I thought, that's why I'm here. Food. I got to get the food angle.
It sounds like, just as I hear you speak, Stephanie, you have a gift for like seizing opportunities that exist. Like you being a consultant on the road and finding recipes to sell for your distributorship to the restaurants is the same thing that you're doing.
Yes.
For the bourbon liquor to the customer base that you sell to now.
Right. I am. I'm trying to match what they want to taste. And even if you're not a drinker, you can enjoy a brownie with Irish cream liqueur, and you can enjoy salted caramel butter emulsion that you can use in cupcakes or whatever you want.
Even when you use these words like ganache, emulsion, what did you say about the sugar?
Invert sugar.
Invert sugar.
Yeah.
These terms are like, I'm not a cook at all. So like hearing you say these things, I already know it's high scale, high class.
Well, we try.
For you, it's probably simple to do, but for me,
we were sitting at this meeting in this construction site, and I was trying to figure out how to get people who don't drink in the door and make them buy a bottle of alcohol.
That's also just a side note. That's probably becoming more and more popular, right? People who don't drink.
Yeah.
That's become more of a trend.
Well, you can drink 2 drinks and then you've got to drive. So, that's pretty much, we have a cocktail house. And if you're ever like on Interstate 80 and right on the Mississippi River, you get off at that very first exit at LeClaire, Iowa, and we have a cocktail house there. We also have a cocktail house downtown Davenport.
It's called a cocktail house.
And that would be where you can look through the window. The wall is glass, and you can see the distilling process.
I see.
And have a drink. And we have wonderful bar manager. Comes up with fantastic recipes, really good stuff. We also make mocktails. So like if you're going with your pregnant wife,
that's what I usually do,
yeah.
We had the baby, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So anyway, if you're going in and you can't have a drink or something, then we have other things you can have there. The cool thing about the building is it looks old, but it's brand new.
Yes.
And
rustic type, exposed brick.
Barn boards and stuff. And we have a patio. And under the patio are over 1,000 barrels of bourbon and rye aging. Wow. And next door, on the other side of the patio, we have a celebration center where we have events. So we have bars on each floor of that, and the wall on the backside is looking out at the river.
Are you familiar, Steph, with here in Bloomington Normal? It's called Distill.
No, I haven't been there.
It's the same kind of concept you were explaining. They have bourbon barrels all over the walls in the back. That's where their event center is, but that's where they dry age all these whiskey and bourbons.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I need to go visit that.
It's
I went
great.
to Iceland and went to their one and only distillery.
Okay.
And that was
One and only.
They only have one distillery. And so I thought, how can I tie business into this trip? And I found that they have one distillery and they make the most interesting would be the kindest word I can think of. They use what they have, which we use what we have, but what we have is really good corn and really good rye and really good wheat. And we have farmers that grow it specifically for us.
I see.
They have sheep and they have rocks and they have wool. And
they're playing with the cards that they got dealt.
Yeah. And they have some root crops, but very little soil. So because it's basically a lava formed island, so the soil is very shallow. So they have no corn and things like we do. So anyway, we have those little airline size bottles of bourbon and rye and vodka and gin. So I took my checked luggage was full of that so that I could use it for bartering and trading.
Not sketchy at all.
No, not that I have an alcohol problem.
Yeah, no.
I have a career in alcohol. But anyway, it was interesting to me. I got to the distillery and I said, here's some of ours for you to try. And he goes, oh, it's very good. And he goes, here's some of ours for you to try. And I got it in my mouth. And have you ever been in the situation where you have something in your mouth and you're like, oh,
this is terrible.
no, what am I going to do with this? And so I swallowed it like a grown-up. And I go, wow, that's different. And he goes, yes, we use sheep dung to smoke they smoke their grain with sheep dung. So what I had in my mouth tasted like
Sheep
a
dung.
sweater, like a wool sweater that had been dropped in poo, and then they'd made a drink out of it. And it was no wonder they only have one distillery.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have to import everything that you need to make it.
It's extremely expensive, probably, yeah.
But an alcoholic will drink Lysol.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? I
Yes.
mean, there are people that have to have alcohol,
Right.
and they will drink anything. It doesn't matter what it tastes like.
I've heard, I talked to an alcoholic a long time ago, and it was a very interesting conversation. He was recovering, but he used to drink hand sanitizer.
Uh-huh.
Hand sanitizer has a high volume of alcohol.
And in the during the COVID,
Yeah.
they had a lot of people that would be in the hospital and they would use hand sanitizer. That was another niche that we filled. 2 local hospital chains called the distillery and wanted to know if they could buy alcohol because we couldn't get any Purell. Do you remember in the very beginning?
I do.
March the 15th.
Yes.
They called and said, we're going to need any alcohol that you have. Well, that ethanol, that we keep 60% that tastes good and doesn't burn. And the 40% we sell to the ethanol plant. We bottled some of that, cut it back because Ryan is a chemist and a meteorologist. He figured out what ratio you needed to add water to make it so that you could wash your hands with it, and it would kill germs, and surfaces, and it would kill germs.
Is he still a weatherman to this day?
No,
Or is he just
he goes in if they need a sub, like in a very rare situation. But he does, because we have an event center, he's able to know if it's a good idea to have outside or not.
I see.
So he's got the
that's interesting.
knowledge. He
Yes.
just doesn't do that. Now he's a distiller, a master distiller. So
Fascinating.
anyway, what we were called into service, but we had just spirits bottles, glass spirits bottles. And so we had to call a company like Uline up in Wisconsin and say, quick, we're going to need some gallon jugs, plastic gallon jugs. And we had to call our printer that does our labels and go, we need some labels. And so they quickly put together a couple of pallets of this hand sanitizer.
Wow.
And then there was no trucks. You remember you couldn't get anything delivered. And so they rented a U-Haul and they put the pallets on the U-Haul and they delivered them to the hospital. And we're like, how much is this? And we're like, we don't know yet. But it was fine to fill the gap that they needed at the time. After the whole thing is over, the FDA decided that we had broken rules by making hand sanitizer without going through the FDA. And there was a huge fine. But the governor of Iowa she went to bat for us and said, no. They were called into service. It was like an emergency.
Can you believe, Steph, that's been 5 years?
It changed everything.
It did.
And I'm still living with and trying to get my head around some of the changes.
Agreed.
We started bottling. We have bottled old-fashioned, already mixed, because people wanted a cocktail. And they couldn't go out and get a cocktail. So we started making our famous award-winning cocktail and putting it in bottles, and people would call and they would pull up to the front door and we'd run out and give them a
Probably
bottle.
with a mask on. And
Like the whole crazy
plastic
thing.
gloves.
Yeah. And when we were allowed to go back into restaurants and stuff, people still wanted an already perfect Manhattan or an old-fashioned. And so we still sell bottled cocktails.
Wild.
Which is a great thing. Some of the restaurants in Chicago, Alenia, for example, one of the few 4-star Michelin star restaurants left in Chicago, still needed to keep the staff working and stuff. So they would make meals, like $500 carryout meals, and they wanted a cocktail to go with it. They became one of our best bottled cocktail customers.
Unreal. You still ship to them?
We do.
Wow.
And we like Binny's and Friar Tuck's and stuff. Even Hy-Vee liquor departments, they have access to all our stuff if you just ask for what you want.
What do you think, Steph? This might be put on the spot a little bit, but what do you think is the best restaurant pound for pound in Chicago?
Okay, I have had the unbelievable experience of dining at Alenia. A customer...
Is that like years to wait to get on the
Well, it's like months.
Okay.
But it's dinner and a show. It's theatrical. You don't get to choose.
Not like a stage show, but like the chefs are showing off stuff.
Yes, and the serving and the platters. For example, dear friends said I didn't charge them for something that I catered a party for them, and they said, "Well, let us take you out to dinner." And I'm thinking, "Oh, a steakhouse or something." Not, like I'll have an old fashioned. I'll eat
Kelly's.
a steak. Yeah. If there was still an Ed Kelly's, which I wish. Anyway. They said, no, we'll get you in Alenia. Well, I thought, okay, I've got like 6 months to wait. I'll figure out what I'm going to wear. They call back, can you go next weekend? And I'm like, yes, I can. So I loaded up and went to Chicago and ate at Alenia. And there's, they bring you what you're going to eat. Right. And it's served.
There's no menu.
No, it's served extremely theatrically.
Okay.
And so like there was a course of the maybe 15 that came.
Right.
There was a course that was served on a slice of raw edged wood, and it had all kinds of mushrooms and fiddlehead ferns, stuff that you would get from the forest. And I was eating this going, oh my God, this is the best mushroom I've ever, it was just wonderful creation with mushrooms and fiddlehead ferns. And then I smell, am I in a forest right after a rain? There are little vents, and they make the smell come in. Like the seafood course, you smelled the ocean.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's way beyond. But if you just want to go for a good meal in Chicago, Athenia in Greektown.
Athenia.
It's got this ceiling that opens in good weather.
I'm writing it down.
It's really cool.
You said Athenia and Alenium?
Alenia.
Alenia.
But Athena is on Halstead in Greektown.
Okay.
And the cool thing about it is the ceiling opens in good weather, and you can look up and you're surrounded by skyscrapers and helicopters flying over, and it's got the feeling that you're in Greece.
Interesting.
And the food is served beautifully. The waiters are all fantastic career waiters. They're not there like after college.
No, this is like a professional job.
Yeah, this is their job.
Yeah.
And
hospitality.
Oh, unbelievable. And
I will pay twice the cost for a good meal if I can have a good waiter experience. It makes the food taste better.
Oh, totally different. Yeah. I took people there that go, well, I don't like lamb, so I'm not going Greek with you. Oh, come on. They have steak.
Yeah.
They have seafood. Do you eat any of that? How about hummus? Do you like a good hummus?
Love hummus.
They have the best hummus. And everything, the flaming cheese, you name it, whatever. Yeah. But it's really, really I haven't ever had a bad meal there. And when I was traveling for the distributorship, I could eat anywhere I wanted. And I would always find myself going back there just because of the feeling and the atmosphere and the food and the waiters. And that's what you're looking for. Now, in Chicago now, so many of the good places are closed. I have a sister-in-law who owns a business, and she wanted to take some people to a really good meal in Chicago. I recommended Rosebud because she likes Italian. And it's just outstanding Italian food. Once again, professional waiters, the old Italian feel in the restaurant.
Have you been to Bavette's?
Yes, I have.
Yes. I love that place.
Love that.
It's tremendous. They have one in Vegas and they have one in Chicago. I think there's many across the country, but we went to one in Vegas with one of my friends this last year, and it was tremendous.
And I really like when I go to any town, like we had a business trip to New Orleans, and I went. There was a chef that I had been following and reading his books, and I went to every one of his restaurants in New Orleans. One served breakfast and lunch, and I went there. And then my husband's going to meetings and doing his business thing, and I'm walking all over New Orleans going to this John Besh's restaurants. And finally, I get to the last one. It's the most expensive one. And I go in and I say to the maitre d', I'm a chef. I'm a culinary instructor. At the time I was teaching. I'm a culinary instructor, and I am a huge follower of Chef John, and I've got all of his books. And I just really am so excited to be here. I've been at every one of his restaurants over this week. And he goes, oh my goodness, I need to go tell him. And I about broke out in a sweat. I mean, I was like a teenager at a concert, I'm like, and he said, Chef would like to see you in the kitchen. I got watery knees. I was like, I get to go in the kitchen where John Besh is. And then I walked in and he had everybody applaud. He goes, this is a culinary instructor. Wow. And without her, I wouldn't have any of you. You wouldn't have jobs. This is an important thing she does. And she thinks what she just ate was spectacular. So good for you. Great on her. And he signed my book. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like a 12-year-old. I was really crazy. But you can be a fan of a certain style of cooking. And his is very, very Cajun Creole. Okay. And that is something that I wanted to experience. Then you go to a country like Iceland, and you want to do, what do they do the best? Fish. And you want to sample all that. Seafood. Definitely seafood. And hot dogs, weirdly, because they use lamb. Interesting. It was the most unusually good hot dog I'd ever had. It was a stand on the street in front of the hotel.
Nashville have you been to Nashville?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Down on what's the street down there in Nashville?
Oh, yeah.
You know the street, the strip. Late at night, we went there. This was like several years ago, but my buddies and I were down there, and hot dog stands are on every corner.
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't even care the price at 1 o'clock in the morning.
You need the grease.
You need the grease. And I think I bought one, and then I walked like 2 blocks and I bought another. I was so hungry. But the culture of hot dogs at that time frame in Nashville is like, it's a thing. It's totally a thing.
There and Memphis.
Memphis, same way?
Yeah. They have all the bars on Beale Street.
Okay.
And so not only is there live music everywhere, but there's drunks who need a hot dog. And they have like hot dog stands. Or like a made right, like a loose meat sandwich. Yeah. They have anything with a lot of grease and bread. Yes. Will really help.
Like a horseshoe kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, if you're trying to if you're trying to drink yourself under the table, that would be exactly what you would need to do is stop, eat something, and it absorbs some of what's going on in your stomach.
So let's take it back to your restaurant experience. Given all your years in the restaurant business, you've been, it sounds like, in every piece of it.
Yes. What friends used to call me and say, I have dinner reservations at Everest in Chicago, which used to be on the top of like the Board of Trade. And it was a 3 or 4 star Michelin restaurant. What should I wear? And I'm like, I have no idea. I've only been in the kitchen. I would wear a chef's coat and goofy clogs. That's what I would wear. But then I only go in the kitchen. I had never seen the front of the house. Wow. I traveled the alleys of Chicago because you go in the door where the dumpster is.
Yes.
because that's where the chef is.
We're next to the garbage, and the kitchen's right there.
Yeah. You go through the rats in the alley.
Yeah.
You go past the dumpster. You go in the kitchen door.
Sure.
You do your thing. You make your presentation.
And you leave.
And if you go in the front door, you've got to deal with the maitre d', the hostess, and they're going to want to not let you through. And so I just learned that. So now when people say will you drive us to Chicago? I want to do the shop this place and that place. And I go, sure, I'll drive you to Chicago. So I take them through the alleys, through the back streets, because that's where I live for years, 10 years.
What would you say, given all your experience, Steph, is the most important key to running a successful restaurant?
Being there.
Being there.
If it's your money and your reputation, you don't get a week off.
It sounds like that's common for people not to be there then.
It is, except for where there is a chain or a small a restaurant where there's family can step up for you. But if you walk out and leave it in the hands of somebody that you've known for a year and a half, that's your reputation, that's your wallet. You may as well have just given them every dime you own. They can have that bad reaction to an unwieldy customer, and they can ruin your restaurant for you.
I see.
So family restaurants almost always succeed because you go on vacation and dad steps up.
Makes sense. There's a place here in Peoria, maybe you've been to it. It's called Touche.
Yes.
Yes, family-owned restaurant. They're always there. They shut down 2 weeks in the summertime to take a family vacation. Restaurant's closed.
And
they come
cleaned.
back and they're always there.
Yeah.
He's very meticulous about cleanliness.
Yeah.
But I think his son works the bar. He does some of the cooking in the back. He has chefs that have been with him forever. One of the things I really appreciate about the place is the staff does not change.
Yes.
That means they're paid well.
Consistency.
That means they like to be there. Yes.
Consistency.
But,
and that is probably being there and consistency are the two most important things.
Is that because you can just find problems and then fix them there and then give your staff feedback instantly?
Instantly.
Yeah.
If something's going wrong, you are there and it's you you decide how it's going to be handled.
I see.
For example, if you have an 18-year-old hostess and she sees somebody overserved and being rude, she's 18.
Yeah.
She can't make good decisions yet. I mean, we make her wait till she's 21 to do decisions, but you've given her your wallet.
Good point.
I mean, you've given her everything you own.
Power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should that be the woman that's in charge of your business? I don't think so. Now, that may be all you can hire right now.
Do you think also that people get in the restaurant business because they might have a good idea and then quickly find out how hard it is, and that's why they take a step back or they start to reclude just because you have to be there nights, weekends, like you mentioned. You got to be there all the time where when everybody else is eating at your restaurant, you can't be enjoying your family.
Well, yeah. And I say that, when I was teaching culinary, I would, the first day, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, raise your hand. And several of them had never worked in a restaurant.
I see.
But they wanted to be a restaurant.
Interesting.
So I would say, okay, this weekend, former students are going to have you stand next to them. No pay. You put on your chef's coat. You put on your chef's pants. You go stand next to them all night Friday night, all night Saturday night. And if they're open Sunday, you stand there all day Sunday. And Monday, let's get back together and discuss what you've learned.
Interesting.
And half of them dropped out. But it was ad drop. So they decided maybe there would be a better car mechanic. Good for you.
Yes.
Right on. We need more mechanics.
Yes.
Maybe I'll be a better electrician. Yay. We need some more electricians.
That's right.
I mean, I didn't think I did them a disservice by making them understand what this was.
Right.
I mean, it can be 120 degrees and you can't have a fan blowing on you because that blows dirt on the food.
Or it might inflame the grill even more or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to rely on a good exhaust system.
Yeah.
And you can't prop the door open. That's against health code.
Wow.
So they have to understand you're wearing a chef's coat over a T-shirt in 120 degrees. Can you even do that for 8 hours?
Good point. Day after day after day.
Can you miss every Mother's Day and every Christmas and every Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
I have on the website.
What's the upside for these people? Is it true? I'm going to have Robbie Matheson from Poor Brothers and Slow Hand Barbecue come in this next week, or maybe the week after. He's going to bring some food. Is it for the love of the game then, Steph?
It has to be a passion.
It has to be the passion. So I can already tell, every time you fed me, you take great pride in having your creation be tasted by someone and enjoyed by someone.
Yes.
Is that kind of like the addictive quality of being a chef? Yeah.
It is. It's
like a stand-up comedian getting a laugh.
We are actually adrenaline junkies because nothing is more exciting than a full restaurant and tickets coming at you.
Yeah.
And like, can I do it? Yes, I can. You just set your heels in and you're like, this is how we roll.
Yes.
The problem with being an adrenaline junkie is when you get out of work at 11 o'clock at night and you're hopped up on adrenaline and caffeine, a lot of people go to the bars.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Or drugs.
Yeah.
And you're hanging out with the wrong people.
Right.
And so you drag yourself in the morning, not at the top of your game.
Yeah.
And so I always try to give the students the pitch that we don't do that. If you're going to be a professional, you would handle it like if you knew you had surgery in the morning and you were a surgeon, you would go home and get a good night's sleep.
Right.
Just as important.
Yes.
And if you don't take that level of pride in your work and your workplace, then you're in the wrong business.
100%.
And when I was making up recipes for the University of Illinois, they had a very set parameter. It had to be stuff you could get at the local grocery store, and it had to be stuff out of their garden or their farmer's market. And so I was limited on what I could do. And then I went to work at a food service distributor that had thousands and thousands of items and fresh herbs and fresh seafood. And my mind was expanded. But I was always at home testing recipes, and I have a legal pad right by me, and I write down what I did. Like dinner tonight, I will write down exactly what I go through the freezer.
Tonight.
Yeah. And I write down exactly what I did. And if it's a hit, and if he goes, that was pretty good, I could eat that again. I have it in writing what I did.
Is Jim a pretty big critic? Is he?
Okay, so when Jeffrey came home from school, that would be my oldest. He was in like third grade, and I was working on something that it wasn't going well. And he came in and he goes, "What's for dinner? I'm really hungry." And I go, "Well, I've been working on it." He goes, "Oh no, mistakes again." He was used to eating mistakes. And now I've tried to make it up to him. And while I was in college, while he lived in Chicago, I would try and take him out to nice restaurants so that he could see that,
yes,
this was some work I did. I actually came here and taught these people how to do that, but.
My wife is a tremendous cook. She's amazing, but she never remembers what she exactly puts in things. She doesn't write it down. She always just does it. And I'll be like, Monica, she's so good. But she'll cook some things. I'm like, man, we should make that again. She's like, I didn't write it down. She just tosses salts and peppers and spices. Yeah.
That's where you keep the legal pad right near you.
I'm going to buy her one.
And it's fully, there's even washable paper now. Somebody mentioned to me that I should get a tablet of washable paper because my tablets look horrible. I mean, like I'll be doing something and I'll go, no, I don't have that. So I'm going to scratch that out and I'll just like with food, mark it out. And so if I don't have like Thai red chili, okay, now what am I going to use? Sriracha, maybe sriracha and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Then I write that in instead of Thai red chili.
I see.
So that I know what I did to make that work, which maybe it's a little more lime juice and you think that's not a big deal. But the next time you make it, you added 2 tablespoons of lime juice. That changed everything.
The entire recipe. You're going to laugh at this stuff. My first job, my first restaurant job, and I worked in 2 restaurants, but my first restaurant job, I went for 3.5 years. I worked at Hooters as a busboy. And the experience of Hooters and the Hooters girls and the just the restaurant down there was one whole piece because I was only 17 years old, so I was very young. But just working, I think that everyone in their early 20s or even teens should be required to work in a restaurant to understand how the public functions.
And to make you a better customer.
Oh my gosh, it makes you such a better customer. To understand what a good customer looks like and what a bad customer looks like and what's in between. I remember, I'll never forget, there was a Hooters cart out in front of the building, and there's a if you remember Hooters on the riverfront.
Yes, I do.
There was a boat dock about maybe a half mile down. So they had a cart there that would take people from Hooters to the boat dock or the boat dock back to Hooters. So I would sometimes be able to drive that back and forth. And some guy, it was probably 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I was 17 at the time. Give me a $20 tip. And I was not a Hooters girl. I'm a Hooters boy.
Yeah.
Cargo shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
But he gave me a $20 tip, Steph. And I thought I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but just how he treated me there, I always tip well in restaurants for that same reason, because
and if you've worked,
it's tough.
If you've worked with good wait staff, you know, they deserve to be tipped well.
Yes, they do.
On our 50th wedding anniversary, we got hit by that tornado. You remember that tornado in the summer that came through Kiwani and Bishop Hill area? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we were picking up stuff and all kinds of things off the ground, and we'd worked really hard. And it was like, oh, it's our anniversary. We should do something. And so there's a really nice restaurant in Geneseo called The Cellar, and it's old school, professional wait staff. Wonderful food, excellent cooks there, and presented old school. Like you get there and there's that little appetizer thing on the table, that like celery sticks and stuff. So it's old, it's wonderful. And that's where my plan had been, that we're going to get a shower, we're going to go. We're so tired we can't even raise our arms to shampoo. And so I go like, okay, well let's just go get some food. Well, there's a really good diner in Anawan, right off of Interstate 80. It's called the Purple Onion.
Okay.
Now, this is, if it goes out to hundreds of people, she makes pies from scratch. And I mean, it's just wonderful pie. So we aren't even clean. We're like wearing the sweaty clothes. Yeah. So we go to the Purple Onion and we order what we want. And what I wanted was a chicken sandwich and salad, and they make great homemade soup. And Jim wanted liver and onions, which they make, which I won't make because of the smell in my kitchen. And so he wanted liver and onions and pie. So he orders what he wants. And then, because we didn't go out for a fancy dinner, we went for a great dinner, but not fancy. He tipped the waitress way over what would have been the appropriate amount. Mm-hmm. And she followed him to the door and said, "Sir, you made a mistake." And he said, "No, it's our 50th anniversary, and I wanted you to celebrate."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you tip? This is a controversial thing on the internet. Do you tip when you do carry out food and you go pick it up?
It depends on what they've done to the food.
Okay.
So like if the wait staff has put things in and taken care of straws and flatware and things like that, if they have greeted me in a sweet manner and it's ready and it's bagged up, I will probably tip them.
Yeah. I have such a hard, because tipping culture in the United States since COVID has gotten out of control.
It is.
Because everything you buy comes with a tip, like at Subway.
Oh, and they turn this screen around and they guilt you into it.
There's one question you have for you. It's just like, So there's this thing online of tipping culture's out of hand. And I believe that people should be tipped appropriately based on service. Mm-hmm. If you work at Subway and you make the sandwich, I mean,
that's your job.
I have tipped before at Subway though. So I'm torn because every time Steph, which is not very, I haven't done it very often, but sometimes I'll tip zero. Not at restaurants, but if I carry out and I drive 10 minutes to go pick it up.
And they hand it out the window?
Yes.
No, I'm not tipping.
I feel bad though. It's almost like we're guilted into doing
Guilt
this.
is.
You are. I feel guilty.
However, long ago, I came up with a theory. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been proven true. Guilt makes the world go round because nobody would stop at a stop sign. I mean, guilt is what keeps us from just being crazy, chaotic animals. Right. And so that guilt of turning that screen around at a fast food restaurant where they've done nothing, I feel like no.
Well, they have done something. They worked the job, right?
Well, okay, but this is the kid who stands there and looks at a screen and touches what you say.
Right.
Now, I personally have been called to consult on a restaurant that was opening, and they wanted me to hire for the back of the house.
Okay.
And I was hiring kitchen staff, and it was in Chicago, so it's not around here. And I would not hire anybody who had worked at McDonald's.
I see.
And then the guy who was hiring for the front of this house, he needed to step away. And so he said, "Take my interviews." And so I did. I took his interviews. And this guy comes up and he goes, Yeah, I'm looking for a job as a waiter. And I go, okay. And where have you worked before? And he goes, McDonald's. And I go, oh, okay. And he goes on and on about how he's worked at McDonald's for a year and a half. And that's long term for McDonald's, which I did not realize, but they turn employees rather briskly.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, so I write this all down. And then when the guy who's hiring for the front of the house comes back, I go, do not hire him. He didn't make eye contact with me the entire interview because he's used to looking at a screen.
Interesting.
And I need somebody who's going to look at you and take your order and read your lips. If you are speaking in a restaurant where there's music and there's people talking and chairs sliding on concrete, you need to look at them and read their lips. And if you don't hear what they're saying, you need to say, excuse me, would you go over that again? Or ask them again. And he didn't even make eye contact the whole interview. I said, I'll take him in the kitchen. I mean, he can follow. He can
basic instruction, yeah.
Basically, now we have a point of sale thing that splits the ticket for you. So like the guy at the fryer knows that he's got 17 orders of fries to do, and he's backed up.
Yep.
And the guy at the salad table knows that he's got 3 salads in the works.
I see.
And he's working on 1. So it splits the ticket. They see what they have to do.
Right.
And he's used to that. He's been looking at screens.
Makes sense. So he could do that job.
He can do that, but he can't take an order from a person.
That's something so important in society today that business has become AI, technology, and in your and I's both business, we're working with our hands. You're working with producing something of value,
a product.
And even in the sale, like in a restaurant, a waiter has to sell the product. When I get sold an item from a waiter or waitress, I am so much more likely, if they list the ingredients, my mouth starts to water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I do? This is when I'm training wait staff. I always train them that you are in sales.
Yes.
And if you sell a $5 meal, your tip is maybe
$1.
$1.
Yeah.
If you sell a table and you get everybody up drinking, eating dessert, having an appetizer, now your tip can be $100.
That's right.
You tell me, are you going to work harder to get that ticket up where you need it to be to get the money you need?
That's right.
And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize I'm in sales. They don't have that.
It's a commission sales job.
They don't have that mentality when they come into it. A lot of them, sadly, don't even think of it as service. They don't think to make a constant sweep when you're walking past, his water's empty. That is service. And because I'm going to blame parenting today. Moms are too good at just taking care of everything.
Yeah, I've heard this many times about the number one thing you can do for your kid is let them struggle.
Yep.
Yeah. Let them do the thing and fail. Yeah.
Failure is the best way to learn, I think.
Agreed.
And that's why if you're there in your restaurant and you see a waitress failing, I would never let them go on the first day and just talk to a customer and take an order.
Yeah.
Never let that happen. I personally, as the owner, would walk with them.
That's right.
Show them how it's done.
Stand side by side.
Today, what do? You follow me.
That's right.
You listen to every word that I say. You notice everything I do. And every time I walk by a table, I stop. And if it's mine, I say, how's everybody's drinks? I make it a point. And that is service.
That's right.
And if they haven't learned that at home, where the daughter and the son have to get up from the table and fill up everybody's water.
Right.
Or this is the weirdest thing. I heard this at one of my family members' house. Do we have any ketchup? You're 6. Yes, of course we have ketchup. And sat and waited for mother to jump up and get the ketchup.
Yeah.
You need to learn that, hey, I can go over there. Yes, we have ketchup. It's in the fridge. Then you get up off your fanny and you go there and get the ketchup. But they haven't been doing that.
No. You're right. I fall into this. I have 2 daughters, which I love dearly, and so they're 9 and 8. But I've gotten way better of saying, Dad, can I get a drink? Sure you can. The fridge is right over there. Go up and go get it. Oh, I want you to do it. No, you're very capable.
Yeah. I have a daughter with twins and an older brother who's only like 14 months older than the twins. So she's got a color system, and they have a glass that is their color.
Okay.
And that she's got hooks that she just like those little 3M sticky hooks on the fridge and made a little hole in the cup. And their cup is hanging there by the water dispenser at the fridge. And she doesn't have to get up and get a cup out of the cupboard. She doesn't have to do anything. They have a cup. They know where the water is. Get your own water.
Smart.
It's teaching them how to function on their own in case you would have to go to the hospital or something.
Right.
Would they starve? Or would they be capable of going to the snack drawer and getting applesauce?
Yes.
You know?
My childhood, I was gone. I was just telling somebody this yesterday. I was gone from my house a lot. I spent a lot of time at my friends' houses and slept at my friends' houses a lot. So I just love to be out of the house. I love to be a part of the action. If there was a party going, I wanted to be there. And so when I went to college, it wasn't that big of a stretch for me to live by myself. I adapted pretty well. And then after college, my first job was I was a regional director for my fraternity. So I drove to 23 different colleges and universities in the state of Pennsylvania and around, and then lived in fraternity homes. So I was sleeping on couches, on people's beds, in sleeping bags. So it was just very normal for me to live out of a suitcase. So it was almost harder to transition back to real life where I didn't have to pack a suitcase every weekend or live out of my car. I literally lived out of my car.
Right.
So I feel like I was very well adjusted. And even being an entrepreneur, it's kind of part of my spirit. I think that's kind of where it started to be born, where I started this kind of unique, independent lifestyle of I can just do it myself.
But if you helicopter, and then I have people in my family that not only helicopter, but they bulldoze for their children. Like they clear the path.
Yeah.
They call ahead and make sure nothing goes wrong.
I've heard of this with like mothers calling ahead for a job interview.
Yeah.
Or showing up.
Oh, we're the worst. I had a mother come in. I had to fire somebody who he took the word break like he was entitled enough that he felt that a half an hour to smoke a cigarette would be fine.
I see.
And so I went to the bank, did the deposit, came back. He's still in his car, having still a cigarette or another 2 or 3. And I'd come back in the restaurant and I start doing the slow burn where I'm irritated and then I let that irritation kind of grow.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I'm a screaming banshee ready to take a hide off of him, you know. So I go back out to the car. Now it's been 40 minutes. I've been keeping track. When I left for the bank, and I don't know when he went out before I left for the bank, but he was on the clock. I checked. So he's still clocked in. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and ask him, is your break about over? I knock on the window and he goes, what? Oh, okay.
Sorry, I've disturbed you.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to need you to come in the building. The break is over. And he comes in with attitude. Like, what do you mean?
You just interrupted my break?
Yeah. And he comes in with attitude. And so I hate to humiliate people until you're in a situation where this one humiliation can change the culture of an entire 100%. Group of employees. Yes.
And the older you get, I think, and the more experience you get in business, you can see a bad apple from a very far distance away.
Mm-hmm. And I needed the demonstration of this is not acceptable.
No, it's also by keeping that person involved in your culture and company, you're hurting everybody else who does things right.
Brings it all down.
Yes, it's like, well, rules for that person, but not for me.
Well, he took off his official hat and his official shirt from the kitchen, and he wadded it up and threw it in my face while everybody's watching it. So then I think, well, good riddance. You know, we've done well without him for 40 minutes. I'm sure we'll be fine. And so we go about our business and we do like lunch, and lunch is about winding down, like, 1:15-ish. Mom comes stomping in.
Oh, man.
And in the dining room, she starts screaming she wants to talk to chef Steph. And I'm like, oh, brother. I try to walk her toward the door so that we can have this discussion outside the restaurant. Yeah. And we're walking and she's screaming, and we're walking and she's screaming. And I just keep walking and think if she wants to talk to me, she's going to have to talk to me out in the parking lot. So I just keep walking. We get out there and I said, okay, if you ever want your son to hold a job ever again, you need to tell him that when you are clocked in and you're not working, you're stealing. And the owner of this restaurant depends on us. And we were just opening. Right. And it could have gone terribly wrong at this point if he would have allowed this sort of behavior. And the kid was also that person in the kitchen that, like, I'm a big fan of family meals, and I make something that they can all eat while on their break. And it's usually something that I'm trying out for the menu.
I see.
But he would make himself, like, if everybody else was having truffle mac and cheese or whatever I'd made, if everybody else was having that, he would grill himself a steak.
I see.
So the food cost of his break was killing us.
Yeah.
So I needed him gone anyway. But Mom needed to understand that he can never hold a job this way.
Right.
He will live on your couch in your basement for the rest of his life if you keep this up.
It's actually important for people to get fired if they're truly don't have the character skills to do something. It's important for them to have an abrupt meeting to say, this is not working out and you will no longer do this.
Yes.
For them to say, maybe I should change my life. And if they can't do that, if they can't change their perceptions or their attitudes, good luck living a life worth living, because it's going to be very difficult to work in with human beings.
Well, and I found this in teaching culinary to kids that had watched too much Food Network. They thought that you were allowed to yell and scream like that. And
like Gordon Ramsay type.
Oh, yeah. No, we don't talk to people like that.
I see.
That's how you lose a good employee.
Yeah.
You have to, they're human. Are you human? Because do you want me to yell at you like that? And
although, I do love a good Ramsay show, especially when he goes into like really prideful business owners and turns the restaurant around.
Yeah. I've been called into situations where you can do it that way. But you have to realize that their emotions and their money and their family are all tied into this.
Yeah.
And throwing that bucket of gasoline on it is hurtful.
I see.
I try to say, oh, let me help you. Not let me irritate you.
Of course.
Let me make fun of you or humiliate you. Let me help you. Here's what I see. And if you say it very calmly, I see you burning yourself up and burning your business up. And I see an unclean restaurant. And I see a schedule of people coming and going as they see fit, and you don't have enough help when you need help. And you point out what you're seeing in a calm that they'll listen to you.
Yes.
I mean, I've just never felt screaming. I mean, I don't know, ask my kids. I don't go banshee. I try to make reasonable discussion. And they turned out okay. I mean, I guess I find them great. But anyway, you know.
No, I told, and a lot of that's for TV and the show.
It is for show.
Sure. And the emotions run high.
And I don't think hurting them.
Yeah.
And bringing them to tears in front of the camera. It wouldn't make me feel good about me.
Totally get it.
He must not care how people feel about him.
Yeah. I've had to fire several people in my business over the past 5 years. Not several, a few. And it's never easy. But I just, I'm never angry about things. Let me take that back. I do get angry about certain things, but when I fire people, it's usually a very matter-of-fact thing.
Right.
Hey,
and pointing out where
this
they
is not
went
working
wrong.
out.
Yeah.
This is going to stop now. And
Yeah.
It usually just works out best that way. To leave with some kind of dignity, both them leaving and then me firing them. I want to make sure they leave of a high opinion that I did in my best interest for the business for them.
Well, when I'm consulting with somebody who's having trouble in a restaurant and I just hang out, see who the problem is. Sometimes it's them. But a lot of times it's they have enabled the problem.
I see.
So it's not the owner that you're yelling at that's the real problem. It's that they've enabled the problem and allowed it to fester.
I see.
So yelling at the owner is just hurtful in my book. It's finding out the real problem and then taking them aside and saying, you might not see what you've done here, but you've allowed her to take over your restaurant.
That's right.
You have a very bad manager who's making really bad choices with your money, and you let that happen. I feel bad for you. And then they can cry because we're all crying because it's a sick mess. It's a hot mess is what it is. So, I mean, I feel like you can consult with people and bring them up rather than crush them.
Yes, totally agreed. Totally agreed. Well, Steph, it's been an honor having you on.
Thank you.
I knew from the day I met you that you guys have a very unique story to tell. So I'm glad I got pieces of it today.
Well, the story's still going on, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Serving you 51 years from the same marriage. So.
Amazing. Congratulations.
It's been really interesting where we have two completely different personalities.
Yes.
Where one is a math guy and I can do kitchen math, but the bigger picture, and he's very patient. He's very willing to try new things, and So it's been good. The restaurant business has been very good to me. Starting out at 8 years old in my aunt's restaurant, and now I'm in my 70s.
Wow.
So,
Well, you look amazing. Yes.
And it's all that grease in the kitchen.
It's good moisturizer.
I like to think I put the fine in fine lines and wrinkles.
I love it. What's one thing, just to conclude this, what's one thing you want to leave the people with?
I have a website at the distillery. It's mrdistilling.com. And I'm known as Chef Steph, and I receive emails there, Chef Steph at mrdistilling.com. And I have 470-ish recipes on that website. If you get into a problem with one of my recipes and you can't find an ingredient or you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, then you can email me and I'll email you back.
I love it. We're going to plug that stuff in the comments below, guys, in the description of the video. Chef Steph, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yes, it has. Thank you, guys. Tiger Den Podcast, we are out.